So, here today we're going to talk about infinity, cycles, repetitions. What exactly is space and time? This is a topic that pretty much almost all philosophers have thought about it in one way or the other. Could it be that the end is the beginning of something? So when something ends, there's a new beginning. So, if where it ends is where something else begins, then there's no beginning or end. It's neither. Or it's both at the same time. Let's say that the time is a bunch of stacks. What I did yesterday is save in those stacks. What I will do tomorrow is in the stacks of tomorrow. But wait a minute. If I am stacked from when I was born to all the way to now, then it means that today I'm older than myself in the past. Which means that I'm older than myself. But the myself of tomorrow is older than me today. So I'm younger than myself. And this reasoning I found in one of the books of Plato, where Xhyn comes in and where we have the discussion of what exactly is space and time. And it's also about the discreteness of space and time. Take, for example, a circle. Now, the circle is the whole of circle. If we cut the circle in half, is half of a circle not a circle? It's still a circle because it's part of a circle. But is this half of a circle less circle than the actual circle? For example, a human body or the universe or anything, a building or a table or a chair, each part of an object comprises the whole. So, what I'm trying to say here is, can there be a table if the table has no legs, if it's on the floor? Or can there be a planet without a sun? So what we're trying to say here, or what the Greek philosophers were trying to argue with this way of thinking, is that there is the whole and there's the parts. But each of the parts is a whole in itself. For example, we have a car, okay? The car is the whole of an object. It's an object. But each tire is a whole in itself that is a tire. And a tire is also composed of parts. You have the tire, then you have the seats, you have the motor. All of these parts work together into generating a car. But here comes the question. We can divide matter infinitely, or is there a limit? Zeno, ancient Greek philosopher, argued that it's because you can separate space and time infinitely, you never reach a barrier, so there's infinity in the very small and there's infinity in the very big. So this is a question to think about. And if there's no limitation on how small something can be, there's no limitation how big something can be, or is there a limitation? Because can anything be bigger than the universe? Honestly. That's something to think about. For part 3, we'll discuss that more in depth. Hello everyone. Today I'm going to discuss about the grid. That's exactly what you heard. What is the grid? What is a grid? A grid is a bunch of lines intersecting each other, forming squares, correct? So, kind of like the Cartesian coordinate system, where you have x and y's, right? And you can determine a position in the graph if you know the value of x and you know the value of y. But one implication of the grid is the fact that all the lines if you think of the grid with those lines and those intersections as roads on a map of a city, then you can travel from one part of the city to the other by using the roads in the grid, correct? So then, this brings to mind that the grid shows interconnectedness, which means the points in the grid are all connected. So you can travel from one value of x and one value of y to another value of x and to another value of y, right? Now, what is the internet? The World Wide Web, correct? It's something similar to a grid in which we're all connected to each other through air, through the internet. What does that mean? Let's say, for example, I want to communicate with someone in Japan or someone in Russia. I can always call that person, or that person can be in China or anywhere in the world. And at the speed of light, I'm able to communicate with just about anybody in the world. It's so easy now to make videos online, and the internet shows how connected technology has made each one of us to become. So this is what I call the grid. It's like the world, the universe, and space is a grid in which we're all connected. Not only technologically, but also naturally, because quantum physics states that a change in the spin of an electron here on Earth automatically changes the spin of electron in the furthest regions of space. So this interconnectedness, the fact that we're all connected, we're all linked, nothing is in isolation. Well, for example, a butterfly flapping its wings in Amazon will immediately make a change that will over time add up to the point where the history and the story changes of the world. Had that butterfly flapped its wings a little different, or had that butterfly had south instead of north, the entire scheme of things would have been different. This is because a small difference added over time can lead to huge differences, such as 2, 4, 8, 16, and so forth. So small differences, small changes lead to big changes in the future. We're all connected at the speed of light. If I want to call somebody in Europe or anywhere in the world, we're all connected, and we're all able to do that. Technology, because technology is playing with the natural world, we're able, through technology, to reinforce the concept that there's already a part of nature, which is the fact that we're all connected, we're all in a grid. We're all intersections of a grid, and we're all members of one body. We're members of the world, the universe. And this is what I call globalization. Today, I'm going to talk about some of my ideas about technology, about connections between extremes or between things that are near, and so forth. So imagine that we have, according to quantum physics, creation out of nothing, right? So what does that mean? Here I have a piece of technology, right? And this piece of technology works wirelessly. So it emits frequencies at a given wavelength. Of course, the speed of light is wavelength times frequency. So if it has frequency, it has wavelength, and the speed of light is 3 times 10 to the 8 meters per second in a vacuum. Here in air, it's about that. You know, it might slow down a little bit and so forth. But the whole point is that creation from nothing, we have fluctuations everywhere in space. Particles that are propagated in space, they're constantly changing flavors, or you have out of nothing, you have formation of a particle and an antiparticle, and then they exist briefly, and then they meet each other again and they annihilate each other. So you have matter and antimatter. You can have +1 and -1. When you add them both, you get 0. So you got nothing there. Well, light, when light propagates in space, it undergoes fluctuations as well, right? From light, E equals mc squared, in which light is a form of energy, you have the creation of matter. Energy equals m, mass times the speed of light squared, according to Albert Einstein. And this is true because we use this equation for many of our understandings of nuclear physics and nature in general. So light is a form of energy. And since we're all made of matter, we're all made of energy, and we're all made of light. So out of nothing came all of creation. Out of light came all the mass that we see. And matter and antimatter, you have +1 -1, which equals 0. When matter is added to antimatter, you get nothing. However, when you separate the two, you get something out of nothing. So nothingness is something. True? And what does that have to do with this piece of technology? Well, this works through oscillations. It emits light at a given frequency. Bluetooth is able to connect it to a device. So we got fluctuations, we got waves everywhere, right? And why am I holding this book? This book is one of the things I've wrote in the past, which I'll make several videos about this stuff in the future, right? From nothing, everything came to be, correct? A tiny cosmic seed was brought forth as a result of quantum fluctuations, because whenever you separate matter from antimatter, you got creation. And we all believe in science, and even non-scientists believe in that everything had a point source, a beginning, right? But could there be several point sources throughout infinity? Could there be several point sources throughout space? Yes. And that's why we believe also in a multiverse. Oh, so there are things that can be bigger than the universe, the multiverse per se. And how many universes are there? We cannot answer this question because anything beyond the universe is beyond of our understanding, beyond our grasp. We cannot see outside of the universe, but we can, because we can barely see within our own universe. All of the exoplanets that we found in the galaxy are very near to us in the cosmic scheme of things. So, this connection and the belief that we all came from the one thing, and technology makes us all connected at the speed of light, this just brings to mind wisdom. Technology is connecting us to the natural world because everything is part of the natural world. Just about everything. So, artificial things are the resources to build artificial things. Artificial, like a knife or a fork or a school backpack or a DSLR camera or a telescope. These are artificial things, but these resources were taken from the natural world, from the ground or from the air or from the water and so forth. And what we need to figure it out is, since we're all connected, how can we benefit from this connectedness? Because connection could also be harmful. Like, for example, you have a flux of radiation, which, although it's part of the natural world, it can cause you harm, because we also live in a universe where good and evil is right next to each other, right? Where we have the dangers present everywhere we go, and everything that exists, knowing that everything's a fluctuation, everything's a frequency. So knowing that we have the good and the evil right next to each other, a topic several philosophers have argued for many ages and stuff. What is the source of everything? Everything came from a one tiny cosmic seed called the singularity. And there was the Big Bang and then the expansion of the universe, creation of everything out of nothing. Within this everything, within all these fluctuations, and within all these probabilities, there are good and bad things. So which is why we got to be very careful. And one of the things that makes philosophers think and wonder is about all the complexities of the natural world. So, what exactly is a book? A book is a collection of information divided into chapters or topics which somewhat relates to each other for a given purpose, which is to deliver some form of information. So all the pages of the book are connected. They're binded together. And we have the chapters, we have the several topics, and we have a book title, which may give us some insight of the main idea of this. So what exactly is, or how can a book relate to just about anything? Here's what it implies. Since the book is a collection of words divided into chapters, so we got some discreteness here. And these chapters, they have information, right? And any piece of information, just like music. Music is a way of sending information. Because music not only sends information, but it sends feelings. You are what you eat. You also are what you hear, which is why we got to be very careful with what you're listening, because frequencies of sound can interfere with our brain activity, giving rise to sensations and feelings. If the music is not nice, these feelings will not be pleasant. If music is at a good frequency, we're going to feel joy and we're going to be overcome with this feeling and sensation that is the intention of the music, that is also the intention of a book. Although a book doesn't have frequencies, when you read a paragraph, your mind is reading it for you. Have y'all noticed that when you read, you hear a voice inside your mind while you're reading? Isn't that weird? How is that voice exactly? When you listen, when you're reading, how is that voice usually when you read? Now, a book may also have pictures. It might have pictures in the cover, which might lead you to buy the book, right? Even though they say don't judge a book by the cover does help in choosing a book, and so does the title and the back of it, where it gives us a quick description of what the book is all about. But the words, even though the words spoken, they have frequency, but the words read also have frequency, which is also why you got to be very careful with what you're reading, because as you read, you're saying that into your mind, or your mind is reading it for you, and so forth. So a book is a collection of topics that narrow down to one. And remember what in the earlier videos that I published here is that we have the notion of the one and the many, the whole and the parts, right? And a book is the same way. A book is a system. And if it's just one volume and there's several other volumes, all the compilation of all these volumes forming one system. So everything narrows down to one. Everything came from one, an idea. Everything expands from that idea. You have multiplicities, you have lots of complexities, you have a bunch of topics, you have a bunch of happenings and historical events. But then in the future, everything narrows down to one again. Everything begins with the one and ends with the one. It's the beginning and the end. Where it starts is where it finishes. Before and when it finishes is where it starts again. And here we have all the structure that binds things together. The structure of all things that exist, both past, present, and future, we are interconnected. Anti-particles are particles traveling back in time, particles coming from the future, particles coming from the past, and we are here in the present, and how we are all related to this space-time phenomenon, which is the reality of all things that exist. And the book is just part of an explanation, and the book can be the key to all the explanations in the world. And the internet is nothing but a book in an electronic version with a huge database from where we can have access to an infinite source of information. Let me say infinite instead of finite, although I know it's a finite amount of information, but it gives you rise to an infinite amount of probabilities and things that can be derived from it. Hello everyone. So how can we understand frequency, wavelength, oscillations, flux, fluctuations, and so forth? Well, the universe is a sea of waves, pretty much. Imagine yourself in a stage where you're being watched by several people in the auditorium. You see among all these people a bunch of people that are thinking and experiencing the emotion at the present. And then you notice among the crowd that in one corner people are more hyper, in the other corner people are more quiet, the other in the middle, somewhere in the middle, people are neither one or the other, and so forth. So here we have a sea of fluctuations, where on one side we have one thing, on the other side we have another thing, and then the addition of all these people, we have the auditorium. So we normally say, join the flow, right, of events. Why do we say that? Because pretty much events is literally a flow, right? In the same way that I can broadcast in the same way that I can tune my radio to the frequency of a radio station to be able to hear what that radio station is broadcasting. In the same way, the universe and life is a flux. It's an oscillation in which we experience the flow of events. We experience what's out there. But this is not metaphysics. This is physics. This is real science. Because what we have is that the way radios work, the way Bluetooth works, the way Wi-Fi works, is pretty much tuning two antennas at the right frequency in a way that you can connect both. Whenever you dial a phone on your phone, or whenever you call someone, because nowadays you don't have to dial anymore. You just click the name and it calls the person that you want to call. Or whenever you send an email, there's a connection between one piece of device and the other piece of device, and communication is done that way, right? This is why people say, tune in to the right frequency and be peaceful within yourself and enjoy your time. Because if you tune in with the wrong frequency, you will struggle, you will suffer, right? Which is why it's always important to us be very, very careful with where we are at and what we're doing and what we're listening, what we're saying, right? Because we are what we say, what we think, we are what we eat, and we are what we hear, right? Which is why, you know, it's not a good idea to be with bad company, right? With people that are not good. So anyway, but the universe is a oscillation. It's a wave, right? Some parts of this wave are more disturbed or are more hyper, and other parts of the wave are more calm, and other parts of the wave there's still some agitation, but it's more, it's somewhere in between the extremes and so forth. And you can have all sorts of spectrum. What makes red light different from blue is frequency and their wavelength. They're both light, so what makes one radio station different from another radio station is the frequency, is the wavelength of that electromagnetic radiation, right? So we are surrounded by the sea of events, and events come and go. Life, we are born, we grow, and then we pass away. We just like stars in the heavens, where the stars are born and they give off light, they enlarge, they form planets, they enlarge, they get colder, they explode, they give rise to other stars in the universe, and these stars, they grow, they form planets, and then they explode. So everything in this universe come and then they go. Nothing is forever. Unless there is an afterlife, then it would be forever, which is also a topic that several philosophers in the ancient world and modern civilization, we talk about the afterlife and so forth. But this is supposed to be a scientific inquiry of things, so we're not going to touch on that as much. So as we can see, things come and they go. Kind of like the universe, where you have, first of all, you have the quantum fluctuations of light in space. It forms a particle and an antiparticle, which exists briefly and then they annihilate, right? Matter with matter, they annihilate. So here we are born, we grow, we can have children, and then we eventually pass away because we reach old age and so forth. So everything comes and goes, and what we can do is we join the flow with as much positivity as possible, because things are a flux. Now, when we say that you need to join the flow, if the flow is a bad flow, you better not join that, right? So there is pieces of technology nowadays that can generate frequencies which can change your brain waves, right? So we also got to be very careful with that, because we want our well-being to be in peace. We want our well-being to be constructive. This is why culture and music and books that are good are the ones that bring positivity, are the ones that instruct us in the right direction, the ones that give us confidence, the one that gives us instruction. Because the world and the universe is a flux of events, is an oscillation, is a fluctuation, and we need to draw the right flow in order to be successful in life. Hello everyone. Here on my left hand I have a pyramid, and here I have a sphere, right? These are very common geometric shapes. Actually, the ancient civilizations, they really were into building pyramids, right? Ziggurats in Mesopotamia, pyramids in Egypt, pyramids in Latin America and so forth. In Mesoamerica, I should say. Well, they were not Latin yet, since the Portuguese and the Spanish had not yet arrived there when they were building pyramids, the natives. We also have evidence for pyramids in China and pretty much all over the world. A pyramid was a very common shape for that humans at that time chose for their buildings. So it's not surprising that the triangle, a pyramid looks like a triangle seen in one side. This one, for example, has a square as its base. It's no surprise that a triangle is very important in helping us understand trigonometry, helping us to measure the angles of stars above the horizon in the sky at night. That the triangle is used to derive the equations of sine and cosine. We have the unit circle and the rotation of the radius of that unit circle, where we have the production of sine and cosine waves. So a triangle in a pyramid are very important shapes in the, not only in our civilization, but also in our science and philosophy. So the way we see this is that as you go towards the base, it gets wider, and as you go higher up, it gets thinner. Think about it this way. Let's say, for example, that as you move up in Earth, as you go up the ladders of heavens, the atmospheric pressure drops. The amount of molecules and particles drop as well. And as you keep going up, and when you reach space, it's almost a vacuum. It's almost a vacuum because there's still an atom of hydrogen for every cubic meter and stuff like that, or centimeter and stuff like that. So very, very, almost like a vacuum. As we go up, things get simpler and more and less complicated. As you go towards the ground, the atmospheric pressure gets more thick and heavy, and then as you go towards the underground, things get hotter and more dense, right? And the interior of the Earth is very hot and very dense, and that's where you have the molten iron spinning, which generates the magnetic field of the Earth. Which, if we didn't have a magnetic field, we wouldn't have life in here. There were a series of events that work just fine, the fine-tuning, to allow for the birth of life on Earth. Think about it, if it wasn't for the moon, we wouldn't have that shield during the time we were being bombarded by asteroids. So there's a lot of things that went right on Earth. But as you go up, things get simpler. And I can imagine a universe that is simpler and a universe that is more complicated. Because we live in a multiverse, we live in one of the several universes that there are, if the multiverse theory is correct. Which means that some universes, the laws and the constants and the reality might be more simple. And in some universes, it might be more complicated. For example, imagine a universe where instead of the over 100 elements in the periodic table that we have in this one, that universe only has 7 or 8, right? And the physics and the string theorists believe that there is a possibility that each universe will have its own laws and constants, which means that some universes may be more complicated and some universes may be simpler, right? But as we try to understand reality, we know that as we go up, things get very simpler, right? Like, for example, being able to talk to someone without a cell phone, for example. And as we go towards the ground, things get more complicated, more dense, more complex, and it requires a cell phone for communication. It requires technology and heavy mathematics, As we go towards the heavens, as we climb the ladders of heavens towards up, and as we go back in time towards the beginning of the universe, right? Let's think here's the Big Bang and here's the expansion of the universe. Things do get simpler. If we go far back enough, the Earth didn't exist. We were just dust. And the dust is simpler than the Earth, right? And as you go even farther back, there are no galaxies. As you go even farther back, there are no atoms. Just a sea of fluctuations, a particle soup. So as we go towards the beginning of the world, the universe, and time scale, things are simpler. As we go towards the now, things get more complicated. It's almost like the pyramid of the universe is like this, where we have the Big Bang and the evolution. Now is the universe overlapping in itself? Like, for example, will it continue expanding forever and then eventually turn back and start a head-on collision? Well, could it be that the universe is one of the fluctuations in space where we have matter and antimatter, an universe and an anti-universe that exists briefly, and then when they two meet again, they annihilate again? If these quantum fluctuations happens in a micro scale, could it also happen in a macro scale at the universal level? So what does that mean? This is why I think overthinking is almost never necessary, but thinking just enough is necessary. Because when people overthink, instead of thinking with the mindset above the pyramid, at the heights of the pyramid, people that overthink, they're more towards the bottom of the pyramid, which is less noble, which is less valuable. Because in order to solve complicated problems, it is important to simplify rather than complicate things, right? We simplify things, like for example, with a cell phone, you bring the noise down, or you turn it off when you're delivering a speech, and so forth. So it's in mathematics, don't we simplify fractions? Don't we simplify equations to make them simpler and stuff? So we are able to build computers, to build cars, not by overcomplicating our lives, but oversimplifying our lives. You know, instead of having to walk all the way to downtown, I can just drive, and it goes much quicker and faster. Quicker and faster is the same word, by the way. So, but anyways, one of the keys aspects of wisdom is being able to do very complex and complicated things in a way that is simple, not overcomplicating things. Because if you want to solve something that is complicated by overcomplicating it even more, you cannot get anywhere. It's when we separate the facts into discreteness of information, discreteness of data collection, and so forth. It's by putting things together in an organized manner that we're able to understand everything that exists, that we're able to build machines, that we're able to build computers, that we're able to build cars, that we're able to play a game or to win a soccer game, is by putting thoughts together, by simplifying things, by rounding numbers. That's how we can get this overlap of information and be able to have a grasp of the whole. Hello everyone. Whew. It's the end of the day and everything is dark outside. Today we spent some time with family and so forth. Why do we need breaks? That's one question. We need breaks because if we do the same thing for too long, we get tired of it. But boredom can also be a problem, because if you're too bored and you don't have anything to do, and then you try an adventure, you try to climb a mountain and then you have an accident there and stuff like that. So boredom can be somewhat dangerous too. So we should always be attentive to make the right decision, to make the wise choices. If you have nothing to do at home, be thankful for that. After a long day of work, after a lot of time studying, it's important to take breaks. And what do ancient philosophers talk about when we refer to ideas? Like, for example, in the same way it's important for us to take breaks, it's also important for us to work, to face challenges in life. If you never face any challenge in life, you will never have any progress in your life. So it's important to face challenges. Now, Plato, ancient Greek philosopher called Plato, he believed that there is a higher reality than the one we see. There are, according to Plato, the world of forms and ideas apart from this world where we see. And according to Plato, we live in a cave where we only have illusions of reality. Let's think about this. After taking a break for a while, you go back to work. But in order to be successful in any business, work, and so forth, you got to have an idea. For example, let's say I have an idea and I do some search online, and then I get information about this idea. Well, what is above? Is it the idea or the action? For example, if I have an idea to sculpt a statue of a bird, well, if I have this idea now, does the statue exist? Not in this world, but in the world of forms and ideas, it already does. So if I think of a bird, where is this bird at? According to Plato, this bird that you are thinking is in the higher realm of forms and ideas. Now, when I imagine a bird in my mind, and I decided to draw it on a sheet of paper, or I decide to sculpt the bird, then I have transferred the bird from the reality of forms and ideas to the real reality, to this world that we currently live. So ideas are more valuable than reality. So according to Plato, we live in a cave where we only have illusions of reality. Even though I can think of a bird, the most beautiful bird ever, this bird exists in the world of ideas, in the world of forms. At the moment that I draw the bird or I sculpt the bird, at that moment, I have transferred it from the world of forms and ideas to this world. But according to Plato, because this world is just an illusion of this higher reality, we only experience in this world parts of the truth, parts of reality, whereas the real truth is hidden before our eyes. So, before the existence of anything, first there was an idea, and before that thing was brought up in the universe, before the Egyptians built the pyramids, somebody had thought of a pyramid before they began building. Because before you do anything, you got to plan ahead. So this is what's important here, is that there is a reality of world of forms and ideas from which everything comes to being in this world.